In a time where we're spending our moments isolated, I'm learning new ways to connect with people. This new path we're on has been a little weird, to be honest, but I feel like this is the start of a new chapter. Now that we've all slowed down, we've given Mother Nature a final chance to spread her wings, flowers to bloom, and birds to sing, beckoning spring to take over. I think most of us couldn't be more grateful. I know I am. This isolation time feels both syrup slow and also blinkingly fast. We've scrolled through Instagram feeds, learned new TikTok dances. Your mom probably learned some TikTok dances. We did some push-up challenges, spent some good quality time with family. I think that the pandemic proves we have so many more similarities than we do differences. Your pain, your inner fears, your joys, your highs and lows. We can connect with that with other people all around the world. Which brings me to today's show. Once the chaos slowed and the dust settled, many of us use this time to reflect inward, trying to make sense of this moment.
All right, and these are the times where you kind of figure out what do you really want to do. If there's a book you want to get to, if there's a podcast you want to start, is it a business idea that you want to go ahead and possibly roll out? Right now is the time to do it. With everything being at a standstill and a halt, people have to figure out what's their next plan of action moving forward.
That's my special guest, Darren Hall. He's a radio host, a pioneer in his culture and industry, refuses to put anything into the microwave. Just kidding. But he's working towards creating a legacy with microwave culture. He likes the slow roasting kind of feel. He's a firm believer of good things take time. You're probably wondering what that all means. So, I guess you'll have to stay tuned. Hi, welcome to Precious the Foodie podcast, the show that will uncover stories through palates and memories. My name is Precious Pioneer, your host. I'm a chef, a creative, and a foodie. I'm meeting people all over the world using food as a medium to highlight truths into bite-sized pieces.
My name is Darren Hall of Microwavable Culture. Now let me stop the deep voice. But yeah, my name is Darren, Microwavable Culture. Been doing radio for about 3 years. Did some time in the military, did about 5 years. Got out, decided to pursue my own endeavors. And,
cool.
Yeah.
And where do you currently live, Darren?
I currently reside in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, New York. How is Corona and everything treating you? How are you and your wife doing during this time?
I'm definitely doing well. Staying in, washing everything religiously, doing what we need to do to stay safe. So it's been easy, making the most of our time indoors, doing what we need to do. And yeah, so it hasn't really been that bad. Like, a lot of people get cabin fever and they tired of being in the house. They want to go out. We kind of like, yeah, y'all can do that. We'll be in the house doing what we need to do to stay safe. So it's been quite well. What about yourself? How you feeling? You're in DC, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Right.
Okay.
I actually live right outside of DC, maybe like 20 minutes in Springfield, Virginia. And honestly, it's definitely has had its highs and lows. Staying inside is kind of a lot. It's definitely different. But I'm definitely one of the people impacted. At least, my background is a chef, and so my restaurant's closed down since March, and a lot of my friends who are in the hospitality industry are kind of on that weird limbo of will our restaurants ever open up again, and like how do we go about it, and all the safety regulations and things like that. So money is like definitely interesting, but I'm very blessed to be able to stay with my family for a little bit and try to figure that part out. So
well, you sound like you're in good spirits, definitely.
Yeah, I find that isolation is weird in the sense that you don't get the opportunity to see as many people as you would on the typical day-to-day. And I feel like that's kind of where I get a lot of my energy from. But podcasting and talking to people all over the world kind of has given me a very fresh perspective on the fact that my friend in Nigeria or my friend in Spain are all in their houses feeling the same sort of awkward discomfort as I am. So it's kind of wholesome knowing that no matter where you are in the world, everybody is kind of like in this together, and we just have to be a little patient and, you know, get through it together.
All right. And these are the times where you kind of figure out, what do you really want to do? If there's a book you want to get to, if there's a podcast you want to start, is it a business idea that you want to go ahead and possibly roll out? Right now is the time to do it. With everything being at a standstill on the halt, people have to figure out what's their next plan of action moving forward. And so,
exactly.
You know, you got to look at it, you know, glass half empty, glass half full. Yes, it's a bad thing, you know, people dying and everything like that. The bright side is you can use this time to recalibrate your way of thinking to come out this pandemic better than when you entered it. So.
Right. I think that's a really, really good point, because originally, like, I feel like they said that there was like different stages of grief, I guess, where the first part you're like worried and scared, and then the other forms of it are more introspective, and you're realizing that like, maybe it is a time for a pivot, or maybe it's time for self-reflection to figure out what exactly you want to do moving forward. Because maybe you were working at a job or something that you absolutely despised, or you wanted to start something, a new art project and things like that, that you just never had time for. And then suddenly we're in a position where time isn't an excuse, because we have plenty of it, you know. Maybe instead of binge watching Netflix shows or taking extra long naps, we can kind of, you know, redirect and figure out what brings us joy and maybe move towards working on that.
And purpose.
Right.
What is your purpose? Like, well, you know, what are you doing it for? Like, my thing is, it's not about the money. So I'm not chasing money. I'm more so chasing the legacy. You know, what are they going to say about me when I'm no longer here? But with that being said, I have some numbers in my head now, but it doesn't, you know, fuel me to really be the best that I can be money wise. Like, yeah, I'm gonna be the best, but it's not a dollar sign that motivates me to do what I do. The money will come. You just put out great content and be true to yourself and realize, you know, why are you doing what it is you're doing? Like you said, you're a restaurant owner, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Right. That's the end goal.
Yeah. And what makes you so driven about, you know, food, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, like I mentioned before, I definitely have a military background. So from moving from place to place, one thing that I grew to realize is that it kind of just doesn't matter where you live in the world. At the end of the day, my family, like my home, is every night at dinner, my family sits down and has a meal. And I remember that being one of like the highlights of my childhood growing up. Like, there's nothing at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what's going on outside, whether good day or bad day, we just kind of sit there and we all eat together and we talk about our days and things like that. And so as a chef, it just brings me immense joy knowing that when people come to my restaurant, they're celebrating birthdays, anniversaries, milestones, and by them eating one of my meals and just I'm part of their memory. You know, I'm bringing joy to them so that they come to my restaurant to celebrate something, a milestone in their life, and I feel like I'm a part of it. I'm sharing in that experience and contributing to their joy, which makes me really happy to bring somebody that through food and through, you know, through family.
And you got to be passionate about what it is you do, because if you're not, you won't do it to the best of your abilities. One thing I didn't like about the military, it was so fixated, you know, about money. And when you are young, like I joined the military, I was 24 when I joined the military.
Okay.
And they get a lot of people in there, 18, you know, young-minded, fresh out of high school, never really went through any adversity in life. And it's kind of their mindset is, well, you know, I'm going to stay here and, you know, get the money. Because, you know, life tells me that, hey, if I don't have no job, I can't make nothing shake. And they use the fear factor of, you know, well, once you get out of the military, what you going to do? We give you everything. You get free benefits, free health, free all of that, everything, free. What you going to do out there?
Right.
You got to go get it for yourself, and you no longer have the backing of the military. So a lot of people are in the military just because they don't know what they ever wanted to do in life or what they were passionate about. And those are the type of conversations that I like to have with people, and just to see, you know, where do you want to be 5-10 years from now? I used to talk to people in the military, like, you know, the military is cool, but I don't want them having this much control over my life. You know what I mean? Like, one part of being grown is having the ability to do what you want to do when you want to do it, in a certain degree. So
Of course.
Me being in the military, I'm like, I want to think for myself. I want to do for myself. So I bet on myself. And I had to find out what I was passionate about before I did find this new way of thinking that I found. But I had to really go through the military to really realize, who I am and what I wanted to do. And a lot of people won't realize that until it's late, 30, 50, 40 years, 60. And some people will never really wake up and really understand what life really means in the whole totality and what it is you're trying to chase besides a paycheck or a bag. What are you really doing to really fulfill yourself at the end of the day? So I think it's great that you're a chef, and I think it's great that you use the nostalgia from yesteryear of having dinner with your folks and everything like that, and just seeing the joy on other people when they come into your restaurant, they're celebrating as well. So I think that's dope.
No, thank you. You mentioned that after you got out of the military, and then there was a transition, there was like a journey, a change of perspective in your mindset that kind of helped develop who you are right now. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What kind of things did you have to do? What kind of mindset were you in to even change at all?
Well, so it changed while I was in the military. Mm-hmm. And I woke up one day and I remember talking to my wife. I said, I want to talk shit and get paid for it. Methodically, though. I don't want to just be rambling. You got a lot of people out there just spewing bad things and, negativity. Mm-hmm. Why not be a source of clarity? You come to the microwavable culture. You already know what you get. And so my mindset had to change because I had to realize, all right, well, what am I going to do? If I don't have a plan, then I might as well stay in here because, it is a glorified 9 to 5, but ultimately it's still paying the bills, good money as well. And to really, deviate away from that and kind of walk my own path where I want to, write my own ship. I want to be the captain. I don't want anybody navigating, my path. And the way I was thinking, me and the wife talked about it. And, some things I definitely could have did better. Trial and error, of course. And,
with everybody.
With everything. And, the military, to get out and to have a job where you're making, somewhat of the money you were making in the military, it's kind of rough. It's because, the military takes up so much of your time where you can't really have time to do anything outside of that. So you monopolize all your time. So anything you have to do, you had to go above and beyond the military, and they make it hard for you to do whatever you want to do. And I was still in school, and that's how I was doing radio back in 2017, came back from my last deployment, and I started, doing radio. So I used that to kind of navigate my way out of the military.
Mm-hmm. How'd you know that you wanted to pick up radio?
Well, ever since I was younger, I've always felt like I always had this ability to speak bigger than what my age was. So I remember being on a truck back in the day with my dad, but when I was 10. And I just remember the conversations that me and him would have. And I'm noticing, like, man, the way I'm talking, like, it's just the stuff that was coming out of my mouth seemed like it should have been somebody talking at 17, not somebody at 10. So I kind of, in a sense, I kind of felt like maybe I was ahead of my time when it came to doing things of this nature. My mom was a mail carrier, and she always used to listen to radio. And she used to call into the local radio stations, and she used to call me downstairs and tell me to turn on the radio so I could hear her hear her talking before she gets off and everything like that. And I guess it's over the years, I don't know, subconsciously, I just gotten better and better over the years. And then just one day I was like, this is what I want to do. And this is before I even knew a podcast. I didn't know no Joe Budden. I didn't know no Charlemagne. So I didn't have any people that I wanted to emulate. I just wanted to hit the ground running. I wanted to do my thing. And I wanted to have fun with it. And my friends that I do have, I brought them on a journey as well. And I started doing radio with them. And I had a segment, microwavable culture. They would come, we would talk. Very, 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 very facilitating, mindful, and just homegrown good talk.
What is microwavable culture? I've heard you mention that a couple of times. Can you explain to the listeners what exactly that is, what that means, what that is for you, the community?
Well, so microwavable culture is, we live in a society where everybody wants what they want when they want it. while I warm something up in the stove, I could just pop it in the microwave because it's easier. But when you put something in the stove, it takes time. You got to preheat the stove. You got to put it in. You got to turn it. You got to make sure that it's right. Mm-hmm. And that takes time. That's a process. Anything great is going to come with sacrifice and time. You can't rush greatness because you want to be here, and you want to be here 5, 10, 15 years with whatever you're doing in your career, and you want to do it at a high level. And the only way you do it at a high level is you don't skip steps now. Microwave culture is building something slow and steady, but having something that'll last for generations when I'm no longer here, and something that people can look to as kind of like a beacon and something that they can look to and emulate and build for themselves. So, microwave culture is just take the time that you need to get whatever you need to get to correct. Don't rush any process, don't rush any steps, because once you rush the process, you miss certain things that help you build what you need to build now to further assist you 5, 10, 15 years down the line. And you won't get that if you skip steps early in the process, because everything you're doing now is to give you that armor you need to go ahead and fight that fight that you're getting ready to fight. But you'll be able to do it because you took the time, you understood yourself, and you had self-talks with yourself, but you got your game right now. You didn't skip any steps. So now is when people finally see what you're building, they look at you and they're like, oh, okay, how was he able to sustain this? How did he do it? I didn't skip steps. It goes back to microwave culture. You want to put that thing in the microwave, you want to put it in the oven. It's what you want. You can't put everything in the microwave. You got to put some stuff in the oven. And you're probably going to like it better in the oven anyway. So, yeah, that's what it is, microwave culture. You got an idea on Monday, you want to be rich by Tuesday. But it doesn't work like that. And you can't put a time limit on it. You got to kind of have blinders on, understand why you're still doing it, continue to do it. And eventually, one day, your day will come.
No, I like that. I love the food references. I completely, we're on 101 here. I completely understand.
I figured you would like that. And now that I'm talking to you, I forget that you are a foodie. So yeah, you will understand like that.
No, I understand the depth behind it. So with my microwavable culture, you personally, Darren, what kind of, you talk about building a legacy. What kind of legacy do you hope people can see in you? Like when people think of your name, Darren Hall, like what do you want people to resonate with? Like what lessons or things do you want? What's the main takeaway, you think?
The main takeaway, that's a good question, by the way. The main takeaway just, he never gave up. Just the relentlessness, the pursuit. He lived life the way he wanted to live life. He did things that people never thought he could do. I wasn't coming out of Ohio. I'm originally from Youngstown, Ohio, small city. I don't even know if we have 10,000 people in the city, maybe, if that, maybe a little more, maybe, but a little small city. Mm-hmm. And for me, I didn't have a lot of options coming out. In high school, I was subpar. Athlete wise, I was cool, but I didn't have any scholarship options. I didn't have any money to go to school, so I knew I needed to go to school. So I used to live in Maryland. I spent 3 years in Maryland, and I was there from 2009 to 2011. No, 2008 to 2011. And I was down there for some time. And I knew I had to get out of Youngstown. But even then in Maryland, I still didn't know about podcasting because, at the time, podcasting was only radio. But I never envisioned myself being behind a mic. Mm-hmm. So my whole time spent going to school in Maryland was just me just trying to figure out just life. And hopefully one day I will wake up and really realize what I want to do and step into my greatness. But for me, coming out of Youngstown, just not having a small mind mentality, having a big mind and in a small city mentality is what ultimately got me kind of, I guess, to where I am now, ultimately. Helped me get to where I am now. And like I said, I was in California for the past 8 years as well.
Really? How'd you like it? I was born in Cali.
I loved it.
What part?
I was in San Bernardino first, and then I navigated to San Diego.
Okay. I lived in San Diego as well for a little bit.
Oh, well, yeah. Army. Well, not Army. What?
Military, yeah. My dad's in the Air Force. So.
Okay. Makes sense. Definitely makes sense. Oh, yeah. So was he stationed? Because I know they have an Air Force base. I I don't know the name of it. It's not.
No, neither do I. It's okay.
I know it's in between San Diego and San Bernardino. I think it's somewhere around Marietta, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, I love California. All the game I got from California and my time spent there helped me to become the person I am now. Just the game I took from California and just the ability to have the confidence that I have now to be able to talk the way I talk. So ultimately I want people to look at me and see greatness. He built something. He took his time with it. But, why chase it when you can create it? Ultimately.
I like that. Why chase it when you can create it? That's good.
Because, nobody is going to treat you better than you treat yourself. And chasing a job is, it's cool because once again, you're just getting a paycheck. But what are you doing for you?
No, that's good. I like that. I think we could learn a lot from that, especially in this generation. The way that I grew up. Like, I'm 22,
okay.
and so growing up, I think that we just had this mentality to kind of fit this mold of like doing step 1, step 2, going to school, doing this, and it's just like everything was laid out, and so we followed this path. And then, but the thing is that with technology so wrapped into our lives now, it's like there are so many different options, and it's like we have to check in. It's like, are we following just this predetermined mold that we were given, or can we actually pursue different things? Are we trying new things? Like, are we learning new things? Are we doing it because we enjoy it, or just for a paycheck? So I feel like having these questions kind of just helps with your inner growth, because I think you put it was very well said how you said it, that no one's gonna like love you and support you like yourself, so you've got to believe in your own dreams and everything first. But it's not something that you can just skip to. It's not something that's going to happen tomorrow. But working towards it, taking your time and hitting all the steps and hitting all the right marks, I think is a pretty powerful message.
Well, yeah. And, technology can either help or hinder, because you go to IG and, I love IG to death. But IG, two worlds. Some people will open up IG mortified. Some people open up my IG, really happy. And you see a lot of people, you see your peers, people who are in the same age group as you, flashing this, driving in this, walking with this, talking like this, holding this. And it kind of speeds up where you should be in life for some, because the mental fortitude that you need to have nowadays, you need to be impenetrable, because you go through you see a lot of things. Sometimes you desensitize to a lot of things that go on, on social media and things of that nature. But it kind of speeds up when you feel like, well, he's 20 and I'm 20. He got 500 million in the bank or 500,000. I don't even have that. Right. And now you start questioning, you and what's meant for you. And you got to find yourself. Like, isolation is key for a lot of things. In isolation, you find yourself. What do you really want? And especially in times like this, you can't go anywhere, so you isolate it. Are you taking the time to really figure out what it is you need to do? Are you being uncomfortable in times of uncomfortableness to be comfortable? What are you doing for you? And I think, hitting home with the mental health should be the honestly one of the first things they teach you kind of in school. Because without that strong foundation and the mental fortitude, you get caught in certain things. Like, me and one of my good friends had a conversation. And we was talking about, he was like, yo, you know how many people I know that are still heartbroken over a girl, and I'm paraphrasing, that was like 5-10 years ago. And I think we just need to focus our energy into really getting the mental right in these communities. And with that being said, going back to, some people get heartbroken, and they let it linger. 10 years later, you still dealing with the same grief you did. Like, things of that you can't get past to see the bigger picture. To see, exactly. get out of this small city. And it's things like that, and that cycle. It's like, it's not the right mindset to have, so
Some of the things that you mentioned earlier, I wanted to touch on with, and I feel like at a young age that you're right, we need more mental health interjection, because all of us, I feel like everyone, and at least in my generation, had some form of self-esteem issues. And it's, I follow this one guy named Gary Vee. He's like a huge like entrepreneur hub guy. He's pretty frank. And one of the biggest things he says is like, you're buying a whole bunch of crap that you don't need to flex for people you don't like, which I think there's a lot of truth to that. Like there's, like we don't need 50 pairs of shoes yet. Like we have to get the newest ones to show off all these people that we don't really care for, like sometimes if you want certain things, like, okay, then that's really cool. Like then you can get those certain things. Or if you want a relationship and you want a girl, then that's great. Go and do those things. But it's when you do those things for other people, to mirror other people, because those images that you see on Instagram or whatever it is you're getting your news from, your friends, it's when it has a negative downturn, because you mentioned how you repeat patterns and these people are broken up over years of time. It's because they never had that internal reflection of like, do I actually want these things, or am I getting these things because that's what everybody expects me to look to have these things? And so I feel like once you have that deep truth and that deep talk with yourself of like, hey, I actually really couldn't care less if I'm wearing flip-flops, like just having like real talks with yourself to kind of develop a good understanding of what you actually value could be really powerful. And then I think that's the perspective that you really need to start making changes. So.
Yeah, you have to know yourself, timing, like taking the time to really understanding yourself. Because if you don't understand yourself, then you don't know what you like, because you don't know yourself. And I think a lot of people undervalue knowing yourself, because how can you go to like something as simple as this? And I always say this, I say, you can't go to the bar and order the same drink. I said, I can go to the bar and order the same drink. I'm either ordering gin or tequila. That's it. You got a lot of people that don't even know what they like to drink, but they sit up here and say that they will give somebody this or that and the third or this, but you don't even know who you are yet to even make a declaration like that, to say that you would do something like that. And I think knowing yourself, because once you know yourself, then you know what you will go for. And when you know yourself, you will know, what you won't go for. And then something as simple as, why break your back and, exhaust yourself for a woman or a man who makes you get out of your character. If that person makes you throw stuff, bust windows, get in a fight, do this, that, and the third, what are you doing? Because that's a sign of maturity. Like, nah, I'm good on this. I already know, like, you do something to me internally, I'm good. I'm not where I need to be. It's okay to walk away. It's okay just to be by yourself. I just think a lot of people are afraid to be by themselves because they'll really figure out who they really are, and maybe sometimes you don't want to come to that conclusion.
Yeah, and because sometimes facing what's inside is kind of scary. It could be trauma or other issues that you just have to deal with internally, and everybody has to go through it, and it can be a little bit scary to seclude yourself and to isolate yourself and kind of just look on what's the inside, because you don't know what's there. And sometimes once you realize it, then that does require you to change, which also is scary because you might lose friends that you had, people in your group, I feel like, not everybody's meant to stay in your life forever. With growing comes change, and sometimes you may lose important people to you, but it just doesn't match with your lifestyle or your realization that you need to move forward and to grow.
Yeah. And adapt a new mindset, moving forward. And especially in these times now, 2020, where gatherings are probably going to come to a abrupt halt for the next 2 to 3 years,
Yeah.
And I hate to say that because, like I said, you're in the food industry. So, kind of taking a hit if it ain't takeout.
But you see, like, it's a whole mindset thing, I suppose. But, I feel very optimistic towards the future, especially my industry, because I felt like, at least for my my sector of like business, I suppose, people weren't eating at home as frequently, and the quality of food, there's all kinds of different underlying issues with agriculture and our food supply system and all these things. And with Corona, they're actually being destroyed. The broken systems that were in place kind of propping us up have failed. And so I think with this whole coronavirus and this pause, it's actually kind of altering our perspective. It's changing the industry in such, it could be an incredibly positive, sorry, I really couldn't think of that word, a positive direction, because climate change and all these things are a huge percentage is due to the giant CO2 related to our agriculture, the way that we're farming, and all the pesticides and the bees dying and all these like huge issues that were happening in our food industry are kind of now, they're taking a break and they're like reflecting on like, okay, so how do we want to moving forward? Do we shop locally? Do we value local businesses instead of giant corporations? Because there's at one point, in 2020 that only it was either 3 or 4 businesses owned all of the agriculture in America, which is not ideal. It used to.
Yeah, it's not, because they monopolize it, and they're making it hard for other people to facilitate what they need to in these restaurants. So that's terrible.
And so when large corporations own our whole food supply, they control everything, how they. The quality, all these different things. And so now it's like, as it's crumbling, it can only mean better things for food industry and health in the future. And I think as a person who advocates for that, as a chef who wants to give guests like the best quality food and all these things, I think that's pretty okay. Even if I have to sit out for a couple of years, that's okay.
No, I mean, definitely. I have a couple questions for you. Did you is your both your parents are in the military, or just your dad?
He's in the Air Force, my dad.
Okay, and did you ever think about possibly tying up them boots and taking that secret oath?
My dad has tried to convince me when I was younger, years and years. Okay. And I honestly thought about it, because I'm like, I could be like a chef at the White House, or I could, because like military need chefs too, that's like a very real thing. And then it's just, I realized with my like creative nature, military is a very specific mindset of discipline and order, and that just did not parallel with how I am. And so I don't think I could submit, I suppose, to that very strict lifestyle. And so I like creative freedom, and like, they're very organized and they're very sharp, which like you can appreciate, but I don't think I could do that forever. I wanted to kind of pivot this conversation a little bit. So I know that you're in Brooklyn, New York. And so that's actually like a huge like food area. And I really want to pick your brain about like the culture there, what the people are like, restaurants. I kind of wanted to just pick your brain on like living in that location.
Well, there's an assortment of fine dining, fine wine sipping, and all of the above. I mean, my wife knows more about it because she's actually from here. I've only visited, and I'm coming up on been here a year, actually, I think, sometime this week, actually. But no, so New York, I like New York food because you always find something different. Well, whether it's Chinese, whether it's Thai, whether it's Caribbean, whether it's a deli sandwich from a bodega, it just kind of depends on what you have an appetite for, and it's all here. No,
okay.
Little side note on that. With you being in the food industry and everything like that, how do you feel about some of the foods and the representation on the internet about, this isn't a good food for you, or like, the broccoli and the, just things like that, and the beef and all the processed food? How do you combat that when you're everyday cooking?
Oh, I like that. So I feel like the more knowledge that I accumulate, the better decisions that I can make. And I don't know. Right now, I'm in the process of working my way to go to culinary school. I'm destined to go this upcoming January. And so I've worked at restaurants that I just worked for them. I didn't own them or anything like that. And I just worked as a chef there, and I just learned a lot. But my biggest thing anywhere I go is to leave it better than I found it. And so if I find that there's like issues with certain like food waste or things like that, then I try to implement a new system to better that restaurant in the ways that food is being used. I don't have the power to change recipes or anything like that to get a more organic brand or whatever. But I feel like I feel like the best way to teach somebody something is to live it. And so when I was in college, I bought at organic markets. There was a local farm down the street where I got local eggs. I gardened my own vegetable garden, and I had fruit trees and things like that. And so when I had friends or college parties or whatever, people were always curious. They thought it was so cool or so interesting. And it's such a unique opportunity to educate people on like how certain foods or certain locations just check to see the supply chain, like if you're buying strawberries in the winter, there's something wrong. You know what I mean? Where are you getting them from? It's not in season, and then you can also just taste the quality, so obviously in the winter time, like lettuces and things like that are flourishing. So it's going to be the best quality ever. And then in the spring, you want to get your cherries and things like that, so when you start to learn to shop in season, you shorten your supply chain, and the supply chain matters because there's limited regulations on so many different things. Like a lot of tomatoes, they're picked green, and then they go through this oxidation process where they're chemically sprayed to change the color, which, if you grow them naturally, it will turn red on its own. So
my mom used to plant tomatoes, and I used to see them. They used to start off green, and it would eventually turn red. And I'm like, she didn't spray anything on them. Like, it would just turn red. Yeah.
Exactly. And so it's like all of these shortcuts that are used so that they last longer in grocery stores. And so it makes sense because the thing is, though, we live in a culture as well where we don't eat ugly food. And so if there's a bruised apple, if there's a slightly brown banana, like all of that's going in the trash, which is another one of our biggest problems in the food industry is that we throw away a third of all the food that we make. So we're growing like 100 tomatoes, like 30, a little bit of like 33.3, tomatoes are being thrown away for no reason other than we didn't buy them. Yet there's an enormous amount of homelessness, starvation, and things like that. And so it's like a double-ended sword of a problem that we could have fixed, but we're throwing it away. We're not effectively using all of our resources. And so there's all these little food problems and like food deserts, especially in gentrificated areas of systematic racism. But that's a whole nother story of where like there's like communities where there's only like a McDonald's or a corner store and they don't have access to fresh greens and stuff like that. And so it's a huge problem because you wonder why African-American culture tends to have diabetes or obesity problems and like all these issues, underlying health issues, but they don't have access to medicine, which is good food. Food like heals our body, it sustains us. But if we're eating fried McDonald's and KFC all the time, obviously we're just poisoning our culture, and it's really sad. But there's hope. At the same time, it's just like teaching people and because people just don't know, like unless you're like a food advocate like me who just studies food, like you just really won't know. You think it's like normal, it's pop culture and all these different things, vegan is trending and you'll just follow that on Instagram, and that's okay too. But I think just knowing and valuing what you're putting in your body is like a big issue. And one thing that I love that's currently growing is like as information gets out, there's this one guy, he's called the Gangster Gardener, which I think is amazing. And he actually is an advocate for food deserts and like LA communities where there's a lot of homelessness, a lot of people in poverty, and he's building local gardens in their front yards to help them and help their generation, help communities grow fresh produce, because that's something the government won't fund, things like that. And so it's very interesting. You can definitely see positive change as people become more aware. But That's also why, this podcast exists. I'm just trying to have really good organic conversations with people so they can learn something new.
I agree. And that can go back to a mindset with people understanding, what they're eating. I used to talk to people all the time when I was in the military. And, if I see something and if I can help your situation out, I'm going to say something. Now, that's for you to go ahead and drink the water or not. But, I'll pull up with some water for you. Hey. And my thing is what I would say was, man, all that pork, man, ain't no good for you. All that beef, nah, man, I can't give up the bacon, man. It's too good. And I'm like, but
at what cost?
Like at what cost though? Like it ain't nothing. Like I used to drink. I used to eat bacon, pork bacon. And I wasn't deep in the game, as my uncle would say, but I was partial to the ribs and the bacon and things like that. Mm-hmm. Once I realized that it was no good for you, it wasn't nothing for me to eradicate it from my diet. Like, to add on maybe 5-10 years. Oh yeah, because there's nothing better than good health. I think people once again undervalue how much eating benefits. Like how
it affects
how can
everything.
you go get the money if you got a bad ticker? What good is that money if your health is declining? Right.
Right.
You gotta
Exactly.
It makes no sense. Like you wouldn't put sugar in your gas tank and expect for it to run. So why would you put all of this in your body and not, balance it out with some exercise? Life is all about balance.
Microwave
there
culture.
You go.
It's microwave culture. Sugar gets you going quickly, but it's not sustainable.
Yeah, exactly. It's not sustainable. And you cutting corners. You can't jeopardize your health, especially when, the chips, soda is everywhere on the shelves and everything like that. And you made a very great point. You said in some of these areas, they give you a McDonald's, a KFC, or they give you a corner store with liquor and chips. But they'll never give you an outlet to get your health right. And not even physical, the mental health of it all. You don't have outlets. And then you get people who, act out. Why is he acting out? Well, look at the situation. You know what I mean? Like, they don't have anything. Look at the area they're in.
Right. And so it's like we gotta work on that. But I think, like I said, like one of the biggest ways for change is just to live it. Because you can't win over everybody. You can't change everybody's mind. But I don't know. I just feel like that's the first step.
Yeah, you gotta have the faith of a mustard seed, because you definitely had a confidence to pull off what you're getting ready to pull off and what you are pulling off, with the podcast. Kudos to you on the podcast as well. I listened to one episode, not the entirety, but I just wanted to see how your opening was, kind of get a feel for who I was talking to. So definitely kudos to you on the podcast. If you don't mind, how long has the podcast been around, by the way?
So I think I started it this past October, and it actually has changed dramatically. So this is season 2, and originally the podcast concept was mostly for people my age in their 20s. I realized in college that with my friends that I knew a lot of random food information about typical grocery shopping, or like what organic is, or why there's like 27 different varieties of cranberry juice and all these different food questions that like most people were like, just give me like regular bread, like all bread's the same, flour, whatever, And so I kind of wanted to answer some of these questions that they had for me that I just easily knew the answer to. But one thing that I realized is that no one is going to care about something as much as I care for something. And so as much as I'd love to just spew facts about all the different types of milk varieties there are, and then also different types of flour, no one's going to really care about that, And so one thing that I wanted to change in this season is to kind of educate in a way that like brings out stories. And so like I think that it's inspiring to talk to other people and kind of hear their story. And then something that kind of connects us all is the fact that we do eat food, and it is a medium for everybody to get connected with. And so I think it's just very empowering in that sense too. And that's why this podcast kind of like changed a little bit. So originally it was just a straight answer, a whole bunch of random questions, and then now it's a little bit more of a narrative. I want to hear how the other side lives, you know.
No, I think
make it more connectable for people who aren't food advocates like I am.
No, I think that's dope, especially being that you started in October and you already pivoted to what you really want the show to be kind of centered around, if I can say. Like, you know, because when you say foodie, I'm like, well, I mean, I like food. I'm not a foodie.
But I think that's what most people can say. I like food,
and I'm like, well, you know, we can still have a conversation. I mean, conversationalist. You know, I mean, we can have a conversation about anything. But I like how, you know, you tie food into, you know, everyday living. I mean, because you do need food to survive. So that's a conversational piece in itself. And you got to kind of put it like a pastor. You know, a pastor, get up there, not saying you preaching, but you know how they seem to always tie in what the Bible says into everyday life. And you be like, oh, okay, that does make sense. Now, I'm guessing in the sense of you talking about food, you kind of intertwine it with the day-to-day and really catch people's interest.
No, that's good. Thank you.
Not saying that you haven't thought about that, but, you know, with the pivot you made and everything, and I could definitely see, you know, you doing that. I think that'd be kind of good.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we're closing up. One thing that I always do with all my guests is that if the listener did not listen to anything that we just said this entire time, what is something that you could just wrap it up, leave them with something like a takeaway about you, about what we were talking about, or it could be an inspirational quote, just something to kind of just drop the mic and be like, okay, thank you.
I got any motivational things in the hat, babe? Okay, none?
Nope.
I mean, well, one thing I would say, I know, right? Everybody's just hanging on to the word. What would I say for the listeners out there? I would just say, you know, be the person that, you know, you ultimately, you know, want to be. I would want to say good, but of course, you know, good and evil kind of balance out. So, you know, a lot of people gonna do some evil things, a lot of people gonna do some good things. But be the person you want to be, ultimately. You know, do what you want to do and do it at a high level. You know, take the bull by the horns. You got one life. Go ahead and make the most of it. Because ultimately, that's been the whole kind of conversation. It's kind of been centered around, you know, that. Being the person you want to be, taking the time you need to take out to be who you need to be. Go ahead and do it.
Corona has given all of us a lot of uncertainty. It's hard to imagine what the future will look like. But I think redirecting, focus, and figuring out what matters to each of us, sparking our joy, can give us a sense of clarity, to be better. What if we challenged ourselves to go back better, not necessarily back to normal, living the examples we hope to see in the world? I feel like then I'd be able to see a bit of the future. It all becomes a bit more clear. Each of us, small glimmers of light, so we can see where the heck we're going. Because 2020 has been a little bit rough, let's be honest. But maybe then, we won't have to be afraid. Hello everyone, thank you so much for listening to the show. If you want to hear more from Darren, you can reach him at...
Oh yeah, microwavable culture, MICROWAVABLE, microwavable culture. On Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I'm on SoundCloud. Please leave a review and a rating. I'll definitely appreciate
it. Ditto. But it's Precious Pioneer, your host. Catch me on Instagram or Twitter. Send me a comment or message telling me what you think about the new setup for the show. Season 2, first episode. I'm super excited for everything that this season has in store. If you want to be a guest on the show, you can email me at apreciousPioneer@gmail.com. But other than that, as always, live life with love and love food with life. Bye.